They told you nothing happened in the Strait of Hormuz last night. They were wrong. What occurred between 11:47 p.m. and 12:30 a.m. Gulf Standard Time was not an incident. It was a message, direct, deliberate, and addressed to one man, Donald Trump. And the response being prepared right now in rooms the public is not allowed to see could change everything about the world's energy supply, America's military posture, and the next 30 days of your life. Here is what the official briefings left out. 12 Iranian fast attack vessels, and not one, 12, operating in tight formation, did not just enter the Strait of Hormuz. They stopped. They held position across the inbound shipping lane in international waters and forced 3 commercial ships, including a fully loaded tanker carrying 2 million barrels of crude oil, to spend 34 minutes maneuvering around them in a lane barely 2 miles wide. The master of that tanker later described the experience to his company's security desk in language that does not appear in polite reporting. But that is not the part the Pentagon is focused on. 2 of those Iranian fast boats broke from the formation and conducted a high-speed approach on the LNG tanker in the convoy. They closed to 200 meters before pulling off. 200 meters. Do you know what an LNG tanker is? It is not a ship. It is a floating bomb. Liquefied natural gas at minus 162 degrees Celsius. A sufficiently energetic impact does not sink it. It detonates it. A fireball visible from space, a shockwave that collapses structures miles away. Iran parked 2 attack boats 200 meters from that vessel, deliberately. And they did it while American carrier groups were already repositioning in response to the initial formation maneuver. If you want to know what no mainstream outlet is telling you about what happens next, hit subscribe. This channel covers the real decisions, not the press releases. Within 40 minutes of the initial incident, the President of the United States was personally briefed. Within 2 hours, a meeting took place in the Oval Office, not a phone call, an in-person briefing, with the National Security Advisor, the Secretary of Defense, and the Director of National Intelligence simultaneously in the room. That does not happen for a routine maritime provocation. It happened because of what arrived 6 hours later, a formal statement issued directly by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, attributed to a named senior commander, addressed to the American president by name. Not to the State Department, not to the Pentagon, to Donald Trump. Here is what that statement said, and here is the specific line that American intelligence officers who have spent their entire careers reading Iranian communications are calling something they have never seen before. The IRGC acknowledged American statements about military options against Iran's nuclear program. It called them a direct threat to Iranian sovereignty. It said those statements would not go unanswered. Then it listed American assets in the region by category: carrier groups, air base personnel, special operations forces, and named Gulf ally infrastructure, Saudi terminals, Emirati ports. And then it crossed a line. It said in substance that the advisors and commanders urging military action against Iran are not the ones who will pay the price, and that President Trump should ask himself whether he is personally prepared to bear responsibility for what follows. This story is moving by the hour. Subscribe now so you don't miss the next update the moment it drops. Career intelligence officers, not pundits, not analysts on television, people who have read thousands of Iranian government communications and calibrate them for a living, are not describing this as bluster. They are not placing it in the standard Iranian escalatory warning category. They are using a different word, direct. This is a direct personal escalation targeted at a sitting American president by name, with specificity about consequences. It has not happened before, not in this form, not at this level. So what came out of the Oval Office meeting? Not what Iran expected. Iran expected the standard American response architecture, a State Department statement calling the threat unacceptable, a Pentagon spokesperson reiterating force protection commitments, a diplomatic note through the Swiss embassy, managed, contained, proportional. What the president authorized instead was 3 things simultaneously. First, the carrier groups already closing toward the strait were given expanded pre-delegated authority, the authority to respond to Iranian provocations across a wider range of scenarios without requiring individual White House sign-off on each decision. Second, a classified back-channel communication to Iran, not through the Swiss embassy, through a more direct channel. The existence of that channel at this moment tells you more than its contents. Third, a review, not authorization, review of a specific set of military options. Options that are not small. Because here is what physically exists in the region right now. 2 American carrier strike groups converging on the strait. B-1B Lancer bombers repositioned to a forward base the Air Force has not publicly named. B-2 Spirit stealth bombers at Diego Garcia, the platform built specifically to reach deeply buried Iranian nuclear targets, on elevated alert status, with pre-flight checks completed and targeting data updated within the last 24 hours. At Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, the largest American airbase in the Middle East, fuel and ordnance loading visible to commercial satellite imagery has been running at rates consistent with pre-operation preparation. This is not theater. Physical preparation at this scale is not reversible once it crosses a certain threshold, and it is already in motion. Meanwhile, Iran's calculation, the reasoning that produced last night's provocation, rests on a belief that America will not strike, that the combination of domestic political pressure, oil price sensitivity, and Trump's own no more wars political brand makes a major military strike politically impossible. That belief is not irrational. It is also built on a fundamental misreading of one variable. Donald Trump does not respond to personal challenges by calculating political sustainability. He responds, full stop. And Iran, for all its sophisticated intelligence apparatus, may have modeled the American political system accurately while modeling the American president incorrectly. The nuclear dimension makes everything more acute. Iran's breakout timeline, the time needed to produce weapons-grade nuclear material, not a deliverable weapon but the core of one, is currently estimated at 12 days. 12. Every conventional provocation Iran executes in the Strait is happening simultaneously with a nuclear program that is advancing by the hour. The 2 tracks are synchronized by design. The Strait incident creates noise, consumes American crisis management bandwidth, and generates political costs for military action, while the centrifuges keep spinning. Iran does not need to win the Strait confrontation. It needs to keep the confrontation expensive enough, long enough, for the nuclear clock to reach a threshold that permanently changes the strategic equation. The energy markets have already started answering the question the politicians haven't finished asking. Brent crude moved $11 in 90 minutes after the Strait incident hit Asian markets. War risk insurance premiums for Gulf transit have increased over 300%. 3 major shipping operators have suspended Gulf bookings pending security assessment. These are not predictions. They are present tense facts. And they reflect a market consensus that the probability of a Hormuz closure scenario has meaningfully increased, not to certainty, but to a level that demands pricing. The Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, are not watching this from a safe distance. The IRGC's own published targeting doctrine identifies Gulf state energy infrastructure as primary retaliation targets in any conflict. Ras Tanura, Jebel Ali, Ras Laffan, the terminals through which the Gulf's wealth flows. And for the first time in recent memory, the secure communication channel connecting Gulf defense establishments is carrying a question that does not have a unanimous answer. Do we trust the American security guarantee to hold? The UAE, which has been quietly developing independent security relationships with multiple major powers, is now asking a follow-up question that previous UAE governments would not have asked aloud. If America strikes and Iran retaliates against our infrastructure before American forces can intercept, who covers us in the gap? Nobody has a clean answer. China, which imports 40% of its oil through the Strait of Hormuz, has the economic leverage to tell Iran to stop. Iran's oil revenues flow through Chinese refineries. Iran's access to international finance runs through Chinese banks. One call from the right Chinese official changes the temperature of this crisis within 48 hours. That call has not been made. The fact that it has not been made is itself a decision. In the next 24 to 72 hours, a decision will be made in rooms you cannot see by people you did not choose, that either pulls this situation back from the edge or crosses it. If it crosses, the response will not be limited to what you are imagining. Wars do not follow the plans drawn up before them. They follow their own logic. And once the logic takes over, no one controls what comes next. Watch the Strait. Watch the carrier groups. Watch the 12-day clock. If this gave you clarity on something the mainstream missed, share it with one person who needs to understand what is actually happening. And subscribe, because the next 72 hours are going to move fast and you will not want to find out about it after the fact.